Titolo 12. The super famous singers who got caught live Milli Vanilli became really famous in the 80s and 90s. They went from being unknown to selling a lot of records in just a few months. They looked good, danced well, and made catchy R&B music that people loved. But here's the catch. It was all a show. The two guys, Fabrice Morgan and Rob Pilatus, who were supposed to be the talent behind Milli Vanilli, were actually like puppets. They were being controlled by tricky contracts, manipulation, and the decisions of powerful people. They went from being one of the biggest music groups to facing financial ruin, a damaged reputation, and eventually, a very sad ending. Fabrice and Rob met in Germany and became friends. They both wanted to be famous singers, so they teamed up to record an album. At first it didn't do well, but then they got a big opportunity. A guy named Frank Farian played them a demo for the song Girl You Know It's True. Even though the song was mostly done, Frank asked if they could sing it. Excited, they said yes, but mentioned they had other shows to do. Frank assured them he would make them millionaires, and that's how their journey began. At this point, Fab and Rob didn't know that the group they were forming, Milli Vanilli, already existed before they came into the picture. Frank, the producer, had put together musicians and created songs, but he needed a frontman. That's where Fab and Rob entered the scene. In January 1988, both Fab and Rob were given contracts. Being young and inexperienced, they didn't fully understand or read the contracts well, a common mistake for those without lawyers or experience in business. They were 22 and 23 years old, naive Germans and French people who hadn't been in the United States and barely spoke English. Despite thinking they were signing up as singers, they quickly realized that wasn't the case. Within weeks, it became clear that they were meant to be seen, but not heard. The first single released under Milli Vanilli, Girl You Know It's True, was actually the same as the previous demo. However, Rob and Fab didn't sing a word of it. Even though they didn't sing, the song became a hit. Milli Vanilli started touring Europe, performing for packed venues. The trick to not singing live was simple. They used a backing track and lip-synced. Many singers have done this in the past, especially for dance-heavy routines. However, the audience didn't know they were lip-syncing. They believed Rob and Fab were singing live at every performance. Despite the success, Rob and Fab were unhappy. They wanted to sing and have artistic input, but Frank kept telling them, "Not now, we're so busy with promotions." After their debut album was released, many things changed for Milli Vanilli. Frank, their producer, kept telling them to stick it out, and they would talk about giving them more control later. They needed the money, so they continued. As their level of stardom rose, so did Frank's control over them. Now that the world knew their names and faces, Frank told them it was too late to change anything. They had to go along with it. The aspiring singers finally accepted that their voices would never be heard on a Milli Vanilli record. They were there because the actual singers didn't look as good without their shirts off, weren't as good at dancing, and lacked the star sex appeal that Frank wanted for the group. It worked, though. Milli Vanilli, with 5 singles from an album, reached the Billboard Hot 100, something unheard of for a German group. Frank had written most of the songs, picked the vocalists, picked the frontmen, and assembled the musicians. Milli Vanilli was like Frankenstein's monster, with different parts stitched together by Frank to create something with a very specific purpose: to make himself money. Awards started rolling in, including a Grammy for Best New Artist. However, things were about to take a drastic turn for the worse. With fame came obligations, such as interviews with the press. During these interviews, it became apparent that Fab and Rob didn't speak very good English. While there are examples of singers who can sing English perfectly, but struggle with conversations, back in the late 80s, this wasn't considered. The moment they spoke, a clock started ticking down towards the inevitable discovery. As embarrassing as it would have been, they could have explained it by saying they were a high-energy group, and singing live would make their performances lackluster. However, the truth was catching up, and it was only a matter of time until they were found out. The lie Milli Vanilli told about singing their own songs started to unravel, and it became increasingly difficult to keep up. Their fame was like a time bomb, and they knew it. Living a constant life of deception was challenging, especially with Frank Farian's marketing strategy. Instead of giving credit to the actual vocalists who sang the hit records, Frank decided to lie on the American release. In the credits, Robin and Fab were falsely credited for vocals. In Europe, where laws were stricter, the real vocalists were listed. This didn't sit well with the true singers. Charles Shaw, one of the vocalists, publicly called out Milli Vanilli as imposters, adding more fuel to the growing allegations. Frank tried to hush him with $150,000, but the damage was done. In a shocking turn of events in November 1990, Frank Farian publicly fired Rob and Fab, confirming the rumors that they didn't sing a word on any of the songs. The truth was out, and it was a devastating blow. Rob and Fab, now no longer part of Milli Vanilli, took every opportunity to defend themselves. They portrayed Frank as a maniac who lied to them from the start, locking them into unfair contracts when they didn't know any better. They claimed he used them to sell records that made a lot of money they were not entitled to due to the terms of their contract. Despite being one of the hottest musical acts for the past 18 months, their world came crashing down. In the end, Rob and Fab were left practically penniless. Despite being the face of Milli Vanilli, all the money was with Frank Farian, the man behind the scenes. They were the ones people cheered for and held responsible. A week after the truth came out, Fabrice Morvan and Rob Pilatus, still recognized as Milli Vanilli, were forced to give back their Grammy, or to put it politely, it was revoked. They did this during a press conference using the opportunity to show they could sing and rap, proving that they could do what they were faking all along. Despite their efforts to turn the situation into a positive one, the public had already moved on. From being famous, they became infamous, and their attempts to regain stardom in their own voices fell flat. They struggled to find success. Rob and Fab did some media work, appeared in commercials, and even had a cameo in an episode of The Adventures of Super Mario Bros. They worked on their first real album, Rob and Fab, released in the United States in 1993, but it sold only around 2,000 copies. Frank Farian, on the other hand, shamelessly tried to milk the situation. He rebranded to The Real Milli Vanilli, using a lookalike on the album cover. This attempt wasn't successful. He tried again with another rebrand called Try and Be, using unreleased tracks from the previous Milli Vanilli album. Again, not successful. Despite bad-mouthing each other, Rob and Fab eventually decided to combine forces again. They recorded an album in 1998, but it was too little, too late. Rob Pilatus had already struggled with drugs and crime. He spent time in jail and rehab during the recording. The night before they were set to promote the album with a tour on April 2, 1998, Rob Pilatus was found dead of an accidental drug and alcohol overdose. The album was canceled and never released. Fabrice Morvan tried to pursue his musical dreams without his partner, but he had limited success. The rise and fall of Milli Vanilli was one of the largest, quickest in music history. What started as two young men growing up with a dream ended as a nightmare of what could have been. Meeting Frank turned their dream against them. They tasted fame, only to have it ripped away, leaving a stain that wouldn't wash out. Despite the challenges, Fabrice emphasized that, in the end, it wasn't about money, but about finding inner peace and happiness. Now, it wasn't about the money for Fabrice Morvan. He expressed a desire to survive without hunger, but inner peace and happiness became his primary goals. The stain of the Milli Vanilli scandal remained, casting a shadow over any potential success or happiness they could attain. The story of Milli Vanilli serves as a cautionary tale about the music industry, the pursuit of fame, and the consequences of deception. Rob and Fab, two young men with dreams, found themselves at the center of a whirlwind of success and subsequent downfall orchestrated by others. The fame they tasted turned bitter, leaving a lasting impact on their lives. Despite the challenges, Fabrice Morvan continued to pursue his passion for music. However, the absence of his partner and the stigma attached to the Milli Vanilli name made it difficult for him to reclaim the spotlight. The dream they once shared turned into a nightmare, a cautionary tale for aspiring artists about the importance of authenticity and the potential consequences of compromising one's principles. As the years passed, Fabrice Morvan faced the reality that the infamy surrounding Milli Vanilli would likely persist, defining their legacy in the music industry. The stain from their rise and fall remained, a constant reminder of what could have been and the high cost of trading authenticity for fleeting fame. In reflecting on their journey, it's a story of shattered dreams, broken partnerships, and the harsh realities of an industry that can build and destroy in the blink of an eye. Milli Vanilli's tale serves as a poignant reminder that success, when built on deception, can crumble just as quickly as it rises, leaving behind a complicated legacy that the individuals involved must navigate for the rest of their lives. And that's that for today's video. Thanks for watching, and we will see you in the next one. Your suggestions for future videos are always welcome in the comments below.